So yeah, the title of my talk is networked cloud computing. So kind of putting the network into some of these cloud computing infrastructures. So if we think about some of the characteristics of cloud computing platforms today, especially infrastructure as a service platforms, so I'm mainly being inspired here by Amazon's Elastic Compute Cloud, where you go out and you rent machine instances or storage volumes or other types of storage objects. You see that there's kind of a narrow resource focus. Basically, you can rent machines. They're available on the public internet. Or you can rent various forms of storage. It's also available over the public internet using SOAP, Web Services APIs. And also what you see is that you have a bunch of individual providers now. So Amazon kind of started this trend, but kind of all of the big companies are also starting to offer their own infrastructure as a service offerings. So what we're looking at kind of in future clouds are two extensions of this. One is kind of a broader resource focus. So rather than just machines out there somewhere in the cloud and some storage objects, we're actually thinking about putting the network inside. So maybe you would get, instead of just a bunch of machines in some random Amazon data center, you would get machines at different points in the network, and then you would also get provisioned network paths between the machines. And I'll talk a little bit about why this could be useful, or why the project we're working on thinks it's useful. And the other thing is federated clouds. So actually, rather than having a bunch of resources with these isolated pools from these different companies, being able to kind of move, shift code, and shift running systems between different infrastructure as a service providers, and coordinate the provisioning between, say, Amazon, something that's running in Amazon's data center, and something that's running in Rackspace. So this actually allows the consumer to have a little bit more control over what they're doing, rather than just tying everything into one service provider. So the project I've been working on the last couple of years, that is kind of looking at this kind of cloud computing, is called Genie. So it's an NSF-funded project, and Genie stands for Global Environment for Network Innovations. And it's actually a fairly large project. I think there are roughly 80 universities involved in it now that are kind of building Genie sites. But what it actually envisions is a national scale suite of infrastructure where researchers can actually go on and run networking experiments. That's their motivation. But it actually resembles much like a cloud. So what a researcher would do is they would go onto this, they would request various forms of computing resources, machines. It could be broader, it could be sensors or a mobile network at different points in the internet. And then they would also request the topology, or the network paths that connect all of these machines, these resources. And then they would run their experiments. And the motivation behind that is to actually be able to experiment with what networks look like at the lowest layer, have control over the network from the ground up. Rather than right now, what researchers do is they have to run essentially overlays on top of the public internet, and they have no control over the conditions that the public internet experiences. So this is just an example that belies that point. So the canonical Genie example is a user would go on, and they call basically a collection of resources a slice, and they would request resources from one of these Genie clearinghouses, which would federate them amongst multiple clouds, would essentially act as a middleman or a broker, kind of like a real estate agent, guiding the user to the right resources that they want, whether they be from Amazon, Rackspace, or some ISP. And in this case, the researcher wants maybe a compute cluster to run some processing on, connected to a backbone network, provision network paths out to a mobile wireless network. Maybe people to push content out to people, with their mobile phones, right? So like video content, get it closer to the user so that when they pull up a video on their mobile phone, it comes up faster than it would otherwise. Anyway, this is basically a summary. I don't want to go on too long, but if you have any questions, please talk to me.